Well, this is exciting. Here's a really fun tutorial that I think you're going to enjoy, and I think it will, if you've looked at any of my work or you've followed my work for any period of time, you'll be familiar with seeing this style of image, but you probably don't know how I've created it. And I call it the intervalometer method. Now, the reason I call it that is because I use the built-in intervalometer. All Olympus cameras have an intervalometer built into it. A lot of other manufacturers do. Your camera may do, but you just need to go find it. So it's called an intervalometer. Now, what does an intervalometer traditionally do? Well, an intervalometer traditionally is used for capturing time lapses. So what a time lapse does is you set an interval of taking a photograph. So let's say we want a shot of clouds going through the sky. So we point the camera at the sky, we set it all up manually for say a 1/50th or 1/200th of a second, and then we set the intervalometer to at intervals of 1 second or 2, whatever you choose for the speed that you want things to happen, and it will just take those photographs 1 every 5 seconds. And then in post-production, you join them together and it becomes a film at 25 or 30 frames a second if you're in America or some other place where they use that frame rate. So most cameras have that ability. Now, Olympus cameras have it built in. If your camera doesn't, you can go out and buy one of these. We've talked about this already, which is a remote. Now, I use these for something other. I very rarely use them as an intervalometer, but I know they have the function to do that. I use it as a remote trigger. So when I'm taking a photo, I'm out there and I use it to set the camera going. You can also use these. They're relatively cheap. I think you can get them for $100 maybe. There are much cheaper versions on eBay or Amazon or wherever you get your stuff. So you can use that. Now, I use the built-in intervalometer in the camera, and I'll show you how we set that up in a minute. But the intervalometer method allows me to capture just a nice swoosh of light. Now, when you see the ones that, again, and we've touched on this already, the only ones that you ever see are ones that I really like, right? So you might see a frame on my social media or on my website with a swoosh of light that you think is beautiful, and it might look like I've decided, I've looked at it and gone, well, I'm going to create a beautiful S, like that, and then gone and checked it and made sure it's okay. Well, that's all smoke and mirrors. I also use this method when I'm in the water. So when I'm in the water doing liquid light, the camera is sitting there and the intervalometer is clicking away, 1, 2, like you're about to see. And then what we do is we pluck the one out that looks like we made it all up, and that's the image that we get. It's a great method. I use it a lot of the time in all sorts of different places, and I'll show you how we do it. All right, so let's get started. So the very first thing we need to do is decide where we're going to be taking our image. Now, obviously we're in here. I'm also going to show you when we go outside. So what we want to think about is how much of a swoosh we want, right? So what we're going to do is we pick our light painting tool. In this instance, it's a big ass blade attached to a light blade Kaio with a Claris XT11S in it. And I'm going to select an exposure time of 1 second because, and you'll see why, we get a 1 second swoosh. So when we're setting up the camera, it's going to be at 1 second exposure time. So I've got the camera, I'll start recording the screen. So I've got my camera set to f4 and 1 second exposure times. So we go into the intervalometer. So in this case, on the Olympus cameras, it's in here. So we go into interval time lapse. I go across, and here are our options. Now, it doesn't matter whether you have an Olympus, a Canon, or you're using any of these other things. All of these options are here, right? So the number of frames that we want to go for. Now, I set this to large numbers. Sometimes I'm up at, I go across and I set it to 199 or 299 because it doesn't really matter, and you'll see why in a tick. That's because we're going to go out, we're going to do our movement, and we're going to come back, and we're just going to stop the camera. All right, so we're set at 299, start wait time, 1 is the minimum. And then the interval length, we set it to the minimum possible. So in this case, it's 1 second. So what this all means is that when I start it, it's going to take a 1 second exposure, wait for a second, 1 second exposure, wait for a second, and so on and so forth. And we're out there and we're moving. So I'll leave the lights on. I'm going to show you the action, or what I do, and then we'll turn the lights off. So I've got my tool. I've started the exposures. I come out to where I've focused, and basically all I'm doing is I'm just going, I just pick a movement, right? So I'm going, wow. So I might like that shape of an S. Hang on a second. I might like that shape of an S. So I'm just out here just moving, wow. Wow, click, and the camera's clicking away. Click, click, click. And then I might change a different movement for a wide swoosh. But I generally do this. I'm generally doing this in my studio, actually, and I have, the lights are off and I have some music playing that I love. But I have started doing this a little more out in the wild, and it's a bit of fun. Obviously in the water is the place where I've taken it to the craziest degree. So anyway, shall we take a couple of shots? Now, for the purpose of showing you adding in the background, I'm going to turn those background lights off. I'm going to turn these lights off. All right, and so I've got all my intervalometers set up. 299, 1 second, 1 second. Okay, 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 so we're out. So what I know now is when I start it, it's going to start taking 1 second exposures at f4. So let's just get that started. So there we go. So it's taken one, and it'll wait, and another one. Wicked. So I'm just going to walk out here. This is the spot where I was focused, and here we go. And I'm just doing a free, just moving around. Now the cool thing is, some nights I might take 1,000 images doing this. I can looking down, I'm looking at I can see it's lighting up the floor. Now of course you don't want to be lighting up your feet. All right. Now the neat thing is, this is actually it's actually a bit of a workout. All right, so I'm just going to take a bit of a break, and I'm going to come and check how we're going. So I'm going to stop the intervalometer, press play. Ooh. Oh, I like that one. Ooh, I like that one. And so what you find, so I'm scrolling through them, and obviously most of them are unusable. You know, you wouldn't say, no, I can see me. I like that one actually. Sometimes I'll zoom in just to take a look. Yeah, that's nice. Scrolling through. I like that one. I love that. Cool, so we scroll through and we take a look at them. There's maybe one in there that I like. But you can see how what we've done, you can see how what we're doing is we're just creating movements and shape. It looks like it looks organized, but it's not really. It's just a movement and a flow. And so here's the thing. It depends how you're feeling. So now, unfortunately, I have to go back into the menu to turn it back on. Cool. I'll go again. I'll show you something interesting. Now I have the screen turned around, and I can see when the exposures are starting and stopping. All right. So I'm going to do some big swooshes. Big, wide. So I'm big, I'm moving as wide as I can. It's very physical. And then I'm going to try coming towards the camera a bit. Now this tool will give a bit of a starburst. Now the thing with these, right, is you can be gentle. You can be as gentle as you like with these, but if you're feeling aggressive, you can be, Oh, that's awesome. So we'll stop that. Let's take a look. Okay, press play. Oh yeah, some of these are really nice. Oh, that one's amazing. Yeah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we post-process these. Now, while I'm thinking about it, I'll show you something neat. Let me go grab one of those cheap bottles and I'll show you how. This is really important actually, is before you, so I've turned the lights on the background, and what we can do is we can just do, before we turn the intervalometer on, we just do a test exposure. So we'll just do, boom. Yep, so we can see the background. This is cool actually. All right, so I've turned the lights on the background. Let's turn the intervalometer on. Whoops, on, yes, and go. I'm going to pop out and just do the same thing. Oh, let's have a look. Because of course you can, all right, let's have a look at that. Wow, okay, that's pretty crazy. Now the background is quite, I like that one. Now the background, okay, of course our background is now pretty bright, but it's okay. You get the idea. There's a couple of really nice ones in there. I mean, even if it's only one, even if it's just that one, I just absolutely love that photograph. And you'll see in post-production, cropping. Cropping is such an important thing. You need to remember, again, we talked about this before, that your camera sensors maybe have 20 megapixels. You only need the tiniest little amount for social media or whatever, or even for print, I'm telling you. So yeah, you can, there's quite a nice crop in there. All right, here's a bit of fun. We were talking before about the cheap torch. Here's a red bottle I like. I think I've used this once just for a bit of fun, just total experimentation. Let's use the intervalometer method to have a bit of a play with. I don't know why I've got this strap on here. Woohoo! Alrighty, let's. Here you go, there's a bit of fun. Look at that. Now, it's got a clear bottom, which could be a thing, but that's all right. So this is the intervalometer method is a great way to find out if, and we'll turn those backlights off, to find out if a tool's any good as well. All right, here we go. So, we will stay at F4, I think, just for shits and giggles. Alrighty, there we go. So we're going. All right. Wow. Oh, I haven't got the screen facing me, but that's all right. Now, because the bottom of this bottle is clear, I want to be reasonably careful not to get it on the lens. I tell you what, you get hellishly fit doing this. Yeah. All right, let's have a look. Let's see what the old red bottle is like. So we'll stop that. Hit play. Whoa, how wicked is that? Oh my gosh. Whoa. So there you go. I mean, it's only a little dot in the middle of the screen. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll use a slightly longer lens and frame right in tight. But let's have a look at this one frame. I haven't even looked through them all. Look at that. That is so gorgeous. I mean, just, it's a cheap, shitty bottle with a L budget torch in there. And it's still at ISO 200. We haven't even had to crank the ISO. Let's take a look. Oh, that as well. Now here's the thing, this is what I was talking about. So looking at that, we can see that the bottom of the bottle has hit the lens and it's blowing out, but who cares? It's so nice. Okay, let's take a look at this set of images from down at the flower shed. Now, for those of you that are eagle-eyed, you'll recognize that this is not the actual set of stills that we saw on the back of the camera. Those went walkabout on the day, or I wasn't recording them or something. So I redid it down there that day, but here they are. So this is we're in Lightroom in the library. So these are the images that we captured. And what you'll see, it was a pretty quick session. Sometimes on these nights I'll have a couple of hundred, but as you can see, we've got the set at the top here for when the light was on the back, and then we've got the set where it was a little darker, and then at the bottom here we've got a very sexy set of images from using that cheap little glass bottle. So let's take a look. I'll step you through, so I'll go into develop, I'll step you through the process that I go through to find which images I'm going to select. Basically what I do is I make them to a reasonable size, and I can look at these and I go through and I just pick the ones that I like. For a couple of reasons, I quite like this one. I see a crop in there, so what I do is I flag it by hitting P. I come through, I quite like that one, I'll hit P. And again, I'm just doing this reasonably briefly just to keep things sort of short. So I'll grab those two from when we had the background on. Let's see what we've got here. So I've double clicked. Ooh, that's a very, very nice one. Now I quite like that we can sort of see the background here, but I've just spotted this one. I love this for a whole lot of reasons. So I'm going to flag that one. And then let's go take a look at the ones with the glass bottle. So we'll come down here, and because they're small, I'm going to make them full screen and we're going to click through them. Ooh, they look very nice. I'm just going to click through. See which ones I like. That's nice, that's nice. I like that. Okay, here's the one I really like. This is cool. Yep. Let's pick this one, so I'll flag that. Okay, so now what we've got, if we go down here, we can just highlight the flagged items, and we have four images here to work on, 2 in the dark and 2 in the light. So what I'm going to do is the very first thing that I do is I come in. Actually, I'm not going to... Okay, I'll show you what I saw. I see a crop in here. Now you've got to remember, and this is really interesting, this is a huge file. It's 5,000 by 4,000. Now if we're only going to use this in Lightroom or in Instagram, I see a really nice little... So I come over here and I click 4 by 5 because 4 by 5 is the Instagram size. I bring it down. And I'm just going to find a crop that I like. Now, I love this lady space. I've used it a lot. And you can see what I'm doing is I'm lining up and a crop. And there we go. Now, I'm going to show you a little trick that I use quite a bit. And that is this button over on the right here, which is auto. You watch what happens when I click that. Straight away. So I'll undo that. And then I'll click it auto again. And what it's done is it's just reduced the highlights down because it sees these highlights. Yeah, but I quite like this. I think it's a neat looking image. I'm just going to increase the contrast a bit. I don't think we need to bring the shadows out. I'm kind of happy with down here. I'm going to give it a little more saturation. I never go too far. And then a little trick that I like, let's look at some sharpening. Now here's a trick. When you press auto, it automatically puts some sharpening on. Now, see the masking slider down here? If I press Option, and I click this and drag it across, what it does is it shows you which part of the image it's going to apply the sharpening to, because you never want it to apply it to the whole image. So I'm going to bring it in. I like just sharpening just the edges a little bit, and then a little bit of noise reduction. I always click remove chromatic aberration. But then what I do with these images sometimes, I come down here to vignetting. Now if I reduce, you watch what's happening. I'm reducing this vignetting down here. And what it's doing is it's bringing the focus kind of in a little more on her. So I kind of like that. I'm going to grab the cloning tool up here and I'm just going to going to grab the cloning tool and I'm just going to, this PowerPoint on the wall here, let's see what happens. Boom. Gone. That looks fine. All right, so I'm going to leave that there. I've changed my mind. I don't actually like this one that much, so I'm going to deselect it. Whoops, deselect it. And then let's take a look at this one. Here's another, I really like this. So again, I'm just going to jump into a 4x5 crop. Well, actually, I'll show you something that I do quite often. If I like the processing I've done on this one. So if I click on image number 1, shift, click on image number 2 and sync, and I sync everything apart from the crop. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it's gone a little dark, but I like what it's done with the saturation and bits and pieces. So I'm just going to increase the exposure a bit. You can see my hand here, which is kind of interesting. And again, a solid 4x5 crop. It's applied the vignetting as well, which we may or may not get rid of. Let's bring it down nice and hard. I really like this bit of light on the floor here. I'm just going to reduce that vignette a bit. It's a little bit overexposed through the middle here, but I don't mind. I kind of like that. And then let's have a look at this glass. Now here's the great thing. This is, now see, we've got this massive bit of area around here. You've got to remember that even if I bring that in to my favorite crop, which is 16:9, which is 1920 by 1080 type ratio, I'm going to bring this right into the middle of the screen. And look at that. It doesn't matter that all this dark area is gone. It doesn't matter at all, because this is still going to be way big enough for social media. So let's take a look at this. Let's give it a bit of clarity. I'm going to give it a bit of exposure. Now I like to put my highlight warnings on. So see, I've just clicked this button over here by the histogram, and if I slide all the way, we get a warning for where we're losing images. I'm just going to give it a little bit. We'll turn that back off. You can see a little bit of noise in here, but I don't mind. I quite like that. Let's give it some grunt in the saturation. I quite like that. I'm going to give it a little bit of shadows. Let's bring the highlights down a touch. And then I like clarity. I think it can be quite nice. Yeah, I like that. Now, unfortunately, we've got this plug over here in the middle of the image, or on the edge of the image, but that's all right. And then I'm going to pop a bit of a vignette on there just to bring the focus back in. Now, one of the things that's really important is we're going to give it a bit of noise reduction, just to get rid of a bit of this in here. Now, I actually quite like this. I'd post it like this because I like the detail, but we touched on this earlier. I just want to show you something. If we apply noise reduction, it gets rid of the noise, right? Or what? It's not even really noise. It was just texture, but I think it detracts. You know, if we zoom in here, if we zoom in a little tighter over here, and I take the noise reduction back off, I like this texture through here. But if you wanted to take a little bit out, what you got to do is apply a bit of sharpening as well. Just to the edges, just to the edges. Remember what I showed you before? Option, grab the masking, and you can see it's just the edges. Option and masking. Zoom back out. Love it. Export. All right. Image sizing, long edge 1920, perfect for social media. Let's bang it in there. All right. So that's post-processing these 3 images. Cool. Let's jump back into the tutorial. Thanks a lot. I'll see you soon. So that's the intervalometer method. I really want you to get into it. Try it heaps. You might have to go out and buy yourself a remote, but that's okay. You can get them pretty cheap. Intervalometer. Let's turn the lights back on. I hope you enjoyed this visit to the School of Light. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'll be adding videos all the time. Head over to the light painting tool shop at the website. There's a huge array of tools I've made there for you to take on your light painting journey. Peace.